In a moment, Miss Bertrand, you will either produce the names of these senior White House officials who called President Trump a psycho, or you will admit, under oath, that you invented it. The lawyer's voice was cold and sharp, cutting through the tense silence of the deposition room. Natasha Bertrand stared back, her defiance beginning to crack. Across the city, President Donald Trump watched, ready to turn her malicious words into a public lesson on truth and consequences. The cable news alert screamed across the bottom of the screen in fiery red. CNN exclusive. White House in turmoil as insiders question president's stability. On screen, Natasha Bertrand, CNN's Pentagon correspondent, looked grave. Her voice was steady, practiced, but her eyes held a glint of triumph. She was the center of the storm, and she reveled in it. Anderson, she said, turning to the anchor. It's not just policy disagreements we're hearing about. My sources, and these are individuals with direct access to the Oval Office, describe a president who is increasingly erratic, volatile. One source went so far as to say he's acting like a dangerous psycho. The word hung in the air, electric and venomous. Psycho. It was the ultimate escalation, a term designed not just to criticize but to shatter a presidency. The clip went viral within minutes. Rival networks picked it up. Social media exploded. By the time the sun set, Trump's psycho was the #1 trend worldwide. Bertrand's work was done. She had landed a knockout blow. In the Oval Office, President Donald Trump clicked off the television with a quiet snap. He wasn't raging. He wasn't throwing things. The men and women who served him, those who knew him beyond the caricature, saw a familiar look in his eyes. The cold, calculating focus of a fighter who had just been challenged. Get me the legal team, he said calmly to his chief of staff. All of them. Now. Within the hour, the top legal minds of the administration were assembled. They expected to be tasked with a fiery press release or a series of angry tweets. Trump had other plans. She didn't say, a source said. Trump began, his voice low and precise. She said, my sources, plural. She claimed they had direct access. And she didn't quote them on the word psycho. She used it as her own summation of their feelings. It was a deliberate, malicious act of defamation. We're not going to just rebut it. We're going to dismantle it. He looked at his lead counsel. I want a lawsuit filed by morning, not just against the network, against her, personally, for malice. I want discovery. I want depositions. I want the names of these sources. We are going to hold them accountable in the one place they can't hide, a court of law. The next morning, the story was no longer about Trump's alleged instability. It was about the unprecedented lawsuit that had just been filed. CNN's legal department went into overdrive, issuing a statement defending their star reporters' brave journalism and vowing to fight the frivolous and intimidating lawsuit. Natasha Bertrand went on air again, this time with a veneer of defiant victimhood. This is a chilling attack on the free press, she declared. A president using the power of his office to silence a journalist for reporting the truth. But behind the scenes, panic was setting in. The lawsuit's demand for discovery was an existential threat. A journalist's sources are sacred, but the Shield law has limits, especially when malice can be proven. Bertrand's lawyers explained the grim reality. If Trump's team could demonstrate that she had acted with reckless disregard for the truth, she might be compelled by a judge to name her sources. Days bled into weeks of legal maneuvering. Trump's team was relentless, filing motion after motion, refusing every attempt by CNN to have the case dismissed. They argued a simple, powerful point. A journalist cannot invent a narrative. attribute it to anonymous insiders, and then hide behind the First Amendment when challenged. The claim of a dangerous psycho in the Oval Office was not a policy critique. It was a declaration of fact about his mental state, a fact she now had to prove was rooted in credible sourcing. The day of the deposition arrived. It wasn't held in a grand courtroom, but in a sterile, wood-paneled conference room. Natasha Bertrand sat on one side of a long mahogany table, flanked by a team of high-priced lawyers from CNN. Across from her was Trump's lead counsel, a seasoned litigator with a reputation for surgically dissecting hostile witnesses. The initial questions were simple, establishing a foundation. Bertrand answered with practiced confidence, but then the focus shifted to the broadcast. Ms. Bertrand, the lawyer began, his tone conversational. On the day in question, you stated that your sources had direct access to the president. Can you please describe what direct access means to you? Bertrand hesitated. It means they are in a position to observe the president, to be aware of his state of mind. So, a cabinet member, a senior advisor, perhaps the vice president? I cannot speak to the identity of my sources. I am not asking for their names, Ms. Bertrand. Not yet. I am asking for their positions. Did these sources regularly attend meetings with the president in the Oval Office? The CNN lawyers objected, but the question was allowed. Bertrand's confidence began to waver. My sources are in the White House, she repeated, her voice a little tighter. For the next hour, Trump's lawyer circled, tightening the net. He asked about her note-taking process, her verification methods. Then came the critical blow. Ms. Bertrand, your exact words were, one source went so far as to say he's acting like a dangerous psycho. Who was that source? I can't reveal my source. Then let me rephrase, the lawyer said, leaning forward. You have, under oath, sworn that this lawsuit is baseless. To prove that, you must prove your reporting was not malicious. That means it was truthful. So, I will ask again, did a source, any source, use the specific word psycho? Bertrand's eyes darted to her lawyers, who sat like stone statues. They knew what was coming. The truth was a corner she could no longer escape. It was. It was my interpretation of what they were telling me, she mumbled, the words barely audible. The room fell silent. Trump's lawyer let the admission hang in the air before moving in for the kill. Your interpretation. So, no one said it. You said it. And you attributed that word to a source that doesn't exist to give your opinion more weight. Is that correct? She didn't answer. She just stared at the table. And what about these sources with direct access? The lawyer pressed. Let's talk about them. What followed was a complete collapse of her story. Under relentless questioning, Bertrand was forced to admit her sources were not senior advisors or cabinet members. They were two disgruntled interns, one from the Office of Legislative Affairs and another from the First Lady's office. Neither had ever met the president. Their direct access consisted of seeing him walk down a hallway once and gossiping about news clips they saw online. They had told Bertrand they thought the president seemed angry and stressed. From that, she had built her narrative. The word psycho was entirely her own invention. The deposition transcript was leaked before the end of the day. It was a legal and journalistic bombshell. President Trump chose that evening to address the nation from the White House press room. He didn't gloat. He was firm, presidential, and in total command. For weeks, our country has been subjected to a deeply disturbing and completely false narrative pushed by a major news organization, he began. It was a narrative designed to create fear and instability. It was a lie. Today, in a sworn deposition, the journalist who started that lie admitted to it. He laid out the facts, quoting directly from the transcript. He spoke of the two interns, not with anger, but with a touch of pity for their youthful foolishness. His fire was reserved for the institution that had used them. This was not journalism, he declared, his voice rising with controlled power. It was a political assassination attempt, an attempt to delegitimize a duly elected president with fabricated information. And it was done with malice. He then announced that CNN had, just an hour before, settled the lawsuit for a substantial, undisclosed sum. I have not and will not see a single penny of this money, President Trump stated, looking directly into the main camera. Every dollar of the settlement will be donated to a charity that provides mental health services for our incredible military veterans. Let's help people who truly need it, instead of allowing that word to be weaponized for political gain. The contrast was devastating. Bertrand's malicious slander on one side, Trump's decisive action and patriotic charity on the other. He had not only won, he had taken the moral high ground so completely that his opponents were left with nothing. Natasha Bertrand was suspended by CNN that evening, a suspension everyone knew was permanent. Her career was over, her name now a cautionary tale. A new, powerful precedent had been set. The media was not untouchable. Words had consequences. And in the arena of public opinion and legal fact, a president armed with the truth was a force that could not be defeated. What do you think was the most critical mistake Natasha Bertrand made in her confrontation with President Trump? Was it inventing the quote or underestimating her opponent? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of high stakes, truth, and consequence.